Welcome back to the Stranded Sports Podcast. My name is Ethan Morris, and today I had one of my more unique interviews here at Stranded Sports. I talked to a freestyle canoeer. Before we jump to the interview, let me ask you a question. Do you know who Marc Ornstein is? No? How about 2007 Mid-West Freestyle Canoeing Championship? No? How about you go check that out on YouTube before you listen to this interview, and then come back and listen to Marc Ornstein, one of the world's most famous freestyle canoers. You might as well call him the GOAT of the sport. In 2007, he placed second in that competition. But that video that was posted a year later garnered so much attention. Like I said, you might as well call him the GOAT. I talked to Ornstein today about freestyle canoeing. Like, what is it? I had no idea what freestyle canoeing was before I talked to Marc Ornstein today. I watched the video and I saw, the movements. I kind of thought it was more like figure skating, but on water. On not figure skating, not on ice, but on water. Like, water's made on ice. I'm gonna stop right there. But I talked about that to Ornstein. Talked about what it is. How long it takes for him to perfect his routines. How long does it take him to practice up, and how long it takes him to do this, that, and the other. What goes into picking a song, and much more. Let's jump into it right now. I am here with Marc. First off, what is freestyle canoeing?
Well, it's kind of hard to define, but I'll give it my best shot. Some as the art and science of precision paddling. But basically, it is a skill set of accurate precision ways to control your canoe with great precision and efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
I could compare it in some ways to dressage horseback riding for people that are a little bit familiar with that, in that very subtle movements of the paddle, weight shifts in the canoe result in great correction of the direction of the boat. What we try to do is, in comparison to many canoeists who seem to use a lot of energy and dramatic motions of their paddle to get the canoe to go where it is, we try to maximize the efficiency, the physics of the boat, the body, and the blade being the paddle, so that everything is very subtle and efficient.
Mm-hmm. Freestyle canoeing, how did you first get into it?
Years ago, I became aware of it. I saw some magazine articles about it, and it intrigued me. I had been a paddler for many years, and the precision of it, almost the poetry of it, the way I saw people maneuvering their boats around just intrigued me. And I found out where there were some events being held where they taught the technique, and I went to one up in the Adirondacks, and long story short, after a weekend being immersed in this and the people that are involved in it or were involved in it, I was hooked.
Mm-hmm. So, learning it, was it hard to learn at first, learn all the maneuvers? Because it seems like when you were describing what freestyle canoeing was, it seems a difficult to kind of latch onto and grasp what really that you're doing.
It was difficult. I had to unlearn a lot of what I'll call bad techniques that I had spent the previous 20 years learning. Some of the things seem very counterintuitive or complex to try to do, in that you had to not only do something with the paddle, but shift your weight in the boat at the same time. I was always told that you try to keep the boat nice and flat on the water previous to that. And in freestyle, we often intentionally heel the boat or lean the boat one way or another. So, yeah, it was quite difficult at first.
Mm-hmm. So when did you take part in your first competition?
Oh, I think somewhere around 2005. I can't tell you exactly, but I think that would have been about the first competition.
Mm-hmm. So how long does it take to learn, like, one of your routines that you do?
I'd say it typically takes me about a month to learn a routine, or to develop a routine. I first have to find a piece of music that kind of speaks to me and has the right tempo and that sort of thing. And then I have to build the routine, typically one maneuver at a time. I'm not good at just looking at something quickly, and some people can write the whole thing down, can kind of figure it out on paper, if you will, diagram it, and in a matter of a few hours have it kind of committed to memory. My mind just doesn't work that way. So I'll figure out one maneuver and then figure another one that connects with it appropriately, and a third one, and maybe that's all I'm able to do in one day, and then go out another day and add another maneuver or two to it until I finally build up the whole thing.
So when you go to pick your choice of music for one of your routines, like, what are you looking for? Like, I know you say that it flows, like, so it flows better when you're out there doing your maneuvers, but, like, what goes into picking a piece of music?
Well, first of all, the music itself, you just have to like the music, because you got to understand you're going to listen to that piece of music hundreds, if not thousands of times, both putting together the routine and then, of course, practicing and performing the routine over a period of time. And then the pace of the music has to be something that you can paddle to. Something with a very fast beat, for instance, wouldn't be something that you can paddle to that kind of a cadence. So something similar to a waltz beat often will work. If the routine is of any length, more than, say, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, I find that it has to be a piece of music where the tempo changes, because otherwise it gets boring for the audience to watch. It looks like you're just kind of sort of repeating yourself, even though the maneuvers may be different. It doesn't to an audience look different. But if the cadence of the music changes as it goes, then you can follow with that, and it appears that your piece has more interest then.
So you probably knew this question was coming, but in 2007 you canoed at the Mid-West Freestyle Championships in Peninsula, Ohio, and you took second place. And then a couple of years later, a video was posted of you doing that routine, and it went viral. Did you ever think that that performance would garner that much attention?
No, I had no idea whatsoever. I only casually knew the fellow that took that video, and he did ask me permission before posting it, but I didn't care. I said, sure, go ahead and post it. I never expected anything would become of it. And as it turned out, it was a couple of years before it actually took off and something became of it, if you will. And it was a complete surprise.
How did you find out that your routine went viral?
Actually, a friend of mine who was also involved in this called me up one morning. I was working out in the yard, and he called me up, and he often would call me and we would joke around about a variety of things, and sometimes, do some little practical jokes on each other. And so when he told me that he had seen it go viral on YouTube, I thought he was completely kidding me. I didn't really believe him, and as insistent as he was, And later that afternoon, I was in the house doing something, and I went over to the computer, and I just thought, yeah, let me just double check and see what Paul's talking about, see if he's just joking around with me. And suddenly I realized that there it was, and it had, I forget what it had at that point, but a couple 100,000 hits on it or something. And I, what?
Oh my! So yeah, the next year you went back and you returned to the Midwest Freestyle Championships. Was there any like nerves going into that? Because like I mean, now you're a viral sensation on YouTube. Were there any nerves involved?
I'm always nervous when I go out to perform something. It's a weird kind of a thing because it's a very close-knit group. All of us that are competing are very good friends, and we're rooting for each other. And in fact, back then, the fellow that I was kind of competing against most closely, Jonathan Hammond, he and I were good friends, and his grandmother actually was coaching both of us. And
oh, wow.
Up until an hour before the competition, we were actually coaching each other.
Wow, that's cool.
So, yeah, so it's not like it was this cutthroat competition or anything that any of us took real seriously. We were just out having a good time, and the competition was more a way of just kind of showcasing what we were doing rather than truly competing.
Right. So like, how many canoeists are competing in these types of events? Like, what's the format like?
Well, years ago, there were as many as a couple of dozen probably that were competing at a national level. The sport has really waned, and even though we still have modest attendance at our teaching events and so forth, we actually haven't had enough people to have a real competition in several years now. So we just do an exhibition, which is kind of the same thing, except nobody's keeping score.
Yeah, so how does the scoring kind of break down in terms of like the different like moves, or like how does that scoring all break down?
Yeah, well, there are certain specific maneuvers that are required, kind of like the figure skating routine. So there's some required maneuvers that have to be in your routine, and then there are ways of scoring those maneuvers. For instance, to be scored at full value, the maneuver must turn or rotate the canoe a minimum of 180 degrees, and the canoe must be heeled or tipped to the side so that the gunnel or the upper edge of the canoe is essentially flush with the water. And then there are items like how smoothly the maneuver is executed, that the boat doesn't what we call bobble or bounce around as you're doing it, how smoothly you transition from that maneuver to the next maneuver. So all of these things count into it.
So you said there's not enough people for an actual competition, but you're still freestyle canoeing. You're still doing these exhibitions, correct?
Yeah, we still hold an exhibition at every one of our, or almost every one of our events, and we hold it. We always hold the time slot for a competition open at that Ohio event. In the event that we have enough people that want to actually compete.
Well, Marc, I want to thank you for talking to me today and teaching me a little bit more about freestyle canoeing.
Well, you're quite welcome.